very nice to meet you. I wasn't expecting to be meeting you like this, but we thought we'd experiment with it. My name is Paddy McMahon, but I'm also known as Patrick Francis, as I write under that name. I've written a number of books, and what I would hope to do maybe in this project is that we would chat about things in the books. I just want to explain a little bit maybe as to where I'm coming from with them, because I was, I suppose, I had a very conventional sort of background in a way, growing up and so on, but it wasn't until about 30 years ago that I got into the thing of communicating with what might be regarded as another dimension of life, that I heard about people having spirit guides or guardian angels, and that not alone that, but that they could communicate with us, and we with them, if we so wished. So I found that very exciting. And then, not so long afterwards, I was, if you like, introduced to somebody, a spirit being called Shabaka, at least came through to me in that way, and communicated that there was some material that we'd like to collaborate on and write down, and that maybe that would be passed on and other people would be helped by it. So the name Shabaka didn't mean anything to me at the time. And that was good, because I think I would have been very nervous of if there was anybody, that historical figure, like say, that I knew, and it would be too sort of maybe awe-inspiring to have to communicate with them. But Shabaka was sort of neutral, and it wasn't until 15 years later that I found out that there was a real person named Shabaka who had been the king of Egypt from 712 to 698 BC. And when he was off on his travels, as kings, I suppose, and emperors or pharaohs or whatever were wont to do, that he came across this scroll, and it was supposed to be the story of creation, but a lot of it was eaten away by worms. So he took it and he had it carved in stone and all to preserve it. And then sometime many years later, it was taken over to England, and now is known as the Shabaka Stone. It's in the British Museum. And I was delighted to see it at one stage. But anyway, that was the whole thing about Shabaka. So we started the communication process, which was very strange in a way. It's not as if he suddenly wasn't, I couldn't see him or anything like that. But I felt a presence, I felt an energy, and it wasn't either that he was telling me what to write in the sense of saying, look, this is it, and giving me words dictating to me like that, which was more actually giving me an impression, and I had to fit it into my own structure of language, my own form of the words that I used. And that way, I suppose, was more helpful for me, because as each session went on, I was able to see how I felt about it, and of course it was beginning to open up a whole form of life, a new way of life for me. So I thought that maybe in these sessions then, you see, that we could dwell on some of them and talk about them, and maybe that you might have questions, and we'd see how we deal with them. For example, well, the first session that after the introductory one was to do with light, and that was more, I suppose, straightforward in the sense of talking about throwing light into dark corners, helping us to raise our awareness or our consciousness to be more open-minded, and then that we would have, that it would make life easier for us. So that the more that we are confined by our own conditioning, our own narrow-mindedness, if you like, the more difficult life is for us. And then we moved on to the next session, was to do with simplicity. And we were talking about how we, as human beings, we make life so much more complex for ourselves. That if things are simple, we feel that maybe they're not worthwhile, that they should be more complex, they should be more challenging, or else they don't mean much. So he was sort of helping to take away that sort of mindset, to help us to see that life is more simple and how in fact it is. And of course it brought in the notion of God, I suppose, or somebody that was relevant in some way to all of us in one form or another. But it would be going into all that much later, but initially it's more to do with the idea of God being just not a patriarchal being, like the sort of one that I had certainly had been conditioned to, but more an energy, an animating force, something that we were all part of. But as I say, there would be much more about that later in the following sessions. But then that in seeing things like that, and perhaps accepting them, that help to make life more simple for us. And then it posed for me maybe some questions like, how simple was my life? And how could I make it more simple? And I thought maybe I'd write down answers to that. And then maybe you would feel that there's something in that question for you, that you'd have a look at it, and then maybe we'd come back to it later in our next session. So for now, I'll say goodbye for now, and I'll talk to you again. Thanks.